Zondervan presents A Promise of Hope, Book 2 in the Kauffman Amish Bakery series by Amy Clipston, read by Devon O'Day. In loving memory of my father-in-law, Joseph Martin Clipston, Jr., who left us too soon, you're forever in our hearts. While this novel is set against the real backdrop of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the characters are fictional. There's no intended resemblance between the characters in this book and any real members of the Amish and Mennonite communities. As with any work of fiction, I've taken license in some areas of research as a means of creating the necessary circumstances for my characters. My research was thorough. However, it would be impossible to be completely accurate in details and description, since each and every community differs. Therefore, any inaccuracies in the Amish and Mennonite lifestyles portrayed in this book are completely due to fictional license. Luke Troyer blew out a sigh and wiped his brow. The sweltering heat of the carpentry shop choked the air, the heaviness of sawdust, the pungent odor of stain, and the sweet smell of wood filled his nostrils. Tools and loud voices blared, while a dozen other men created custom cabinets in the large work area surrounding him. He placed his hammer next to the cabinets he'd been sanding and headed toward the small break room in the back of the shop. It held a long table with chairs, a refrigerator, and a counter with a sink. He fetched his lunch pail from the large refrigerator and pulled out a can of Coke. "How were those cabinets coming along?" Mel Stoltzfus asked, leaning in the doorway. Luke shrugged and gulped his cool, carbonated beverage. "All right, I guess. I'm about halfway through." Lowering himself into the chair at the small table, he glanced across at a folded copy of The Budget, the Amish newspaper, and sudden memories of his father gripped him. Pop had read The Budget cover to cover every Wednesday. "You have any plans tonight?" Moving into the room, Mel sat on the chair across from Luke and opened his bottle of iced tea. "Sally told me to invite you for supper. She's making her famous chicken and dumplings." "Donkey, but I have plans." Luke unfolded the paper and skimmed the articles. "Yeah, sure," Mel snorted. "I can imagine what your plans are. You're going to work 3 hours past closing, go home, make yourself a turkey sandwich, and then putter around your shed until midnight. Then you'll go to bed and start all over again tomorrow." Grimacing, Luke met his friend's pointed stare. "I don't do that every night." "Yeah, you do. You've done the same thing every night since your dad passed away." Mel set his bottle down and tapped the table for emphasis. "You nursed your dad for 8 years. It's time you started living again. You're young, so start acting like it." Luke blew out a sigh and turned his attention to the paper. He'd heard this lecture from Mel several times since Pop passed away 8 months ago. Although Luke knew his friend was right, he just didn't know how to move on. He had nursed Pop since he was 21, so Luke didn't know how to act young. "You know I speak the truth," Mel said. "You should leave work on time tonight and come to my house. Enjoy an evening of friends, not solitude." Luke shook his head and opened his mouth to respond, but the whooshing of the door opening derailed his train of thought. He gaped when he found a ghost from his past standing in the doorway. "Delana?" Luke stood, examining the tall, thin woman dressed in jeans and a black leather jacket. Her long, dark hair framed her attractive face, which was outlined with makeup. "Long time no see." She gave him a wry smile, her brown eyes sparkling. "How long has it been? 8 years?" Luke nodded. "I reckon so." He motioned toward Mel. "Delana Maloney. This is my good friend, Mel Stoltzfus." She smiled at Mel. "Nice to meet you." Mel nodded, speechless. She honed her gaze in on Luke. "Any chance we can talk? Alone?" She looked back at Mel again. "No offense." It's no trouble at all." Mel stood and started toward the door. He glanced back at Luke, looking puzzled, then closed the door. Luke turned his attention to Delana. "How have you been?" he asked. "Good," she nodded. "How about you?" "Good." He cleared his throat. "It's a surprise to see you here." "I bet you thought you'd never see me again, huh?" She adjusted her leather purse on her shoulder. Luke motioned.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?